when I was asked to give a title for this, I called it Global Youth Ministry, Making Disciples Who Make Disciples Who Make Disciples. And really that's what we should be all about, as far as I'm concerned. And I think we could make a very good biblical case for that. You guys have already heard from a number of speakers a lot about discipleship, I think, during this conference. For sure you have. And so let me begin by just asking you, turn over your sheet of paper for a minute so you're not reading anything that's already there. And just tell me what your definition of discipleship would be.
I'll answer.
Yeah.
My definition of discipleship is someone who follows Jesus and all his commandments.
Okay, so a disciple is someone who follows Jesus and all his commandments. Excellent. What would you say is discipleship? We've got till 5, so there's no problems here.
Maybe someone who's like teaching another person or another group of people the Word of God and helping them to understand it and apply it in their lives.
Uh-huh. Excellent. Have any of you been discipled? Would you say, how many of you would say, I've been discipled? Okay, now one of you put up your hand. Tell us how did that happen? What was it? Yeah.
Biblically based relationship with the purpose of Christ-likeness.
Excellent. Excellent. A biblically based relationship with the purpose of Christ-likeness and growing in Christ-likeness. Great. Let's have one more. Maybe just tell me what some of the components of discipleship were. What were some, if you had been discipled, what were some of the things that happened for you or to you? Yeah.
I would say just having a relationship with the person and going through the Word and like talking about the Word
Uh-huh.
together and also living the life together. Like for me, a great impact was the example of the person's life.
Mm-hmm.
Like how the person was like going through their relationship with God themselves and like just sharing about it and seeing them living it through and trying to communicate with them.
Uh-huh. She mentioned a few things. Example was one word she said. She talked about relational and relationship. God's Word as being a part of it. Great. Let me, a lot of times when we think discipleship, we're thinking of growing in your spiritual life. And I think, and others, books I've read and different speakers I've heard have talked about discipleship as much more than that. And when we talk about making disciples who make disciples who make disciples, we're talking about more than just helping them to grow a little bit in Christ, even though that's an awesome thing and a good thing. And so as you think about young people today, young people across the world, I want you to think of this definition as you think about discipling young people. And the definition's found on page 3. We're going to jump around a little bit on this. Our definition of disciple making, and I just want you to know that right from the start, that what I'm basing this talk on today is disciple making is the full-orbed process of seeing people come to faith in Christ, grow in Him, and then being equipped to go back and help others repeat the process. Disciple making is more than discipleship, which usually defines how to help people grow. While many terms can describe the disciple-making process, we've chosen 3 biblical phrases to define it. Winning the lost, 1 Corinthians 9:19, growing the believer, Colossians 2:6-7, and equipping the worker. So we see it as three parts of discipleship: winning the lost, growing the believer, and equipping the worker. And I took that definition from Dan Spader, who is president of an organization called Global Youth Initiative. And this is a youth initiative that is all about making disciples and building disciples who build disciples who build disciples across the world with young people. And so he would say, and I would agree with this, that it's about winning the lost, evangelism, growing the believer, spiritual growth, and equipping the worker to develop others and to teach others and to equip others to do the same. And so as we talk about this today, that's the definition that we're going to go by. Let me begin by just asking you, or talking about, why is this conversation important? Why is it important that we even do anything as far as global youth ministry and trying to make disciples of young people? And just let me give you 4 quick answers to that question. First of all, it's important because a large number of young people throughout the world who need the opportunity to hear and respond to the gospel call. There's a world population, a world youth population of approximately 1.8 billion young people. I don't even know how to think about that, but that's a lot of people. 1.8 billion young people, 96% of them living outside of the United States. So the question is why is this an important discussion? Because it's an important conversation because there's so many young people who need Jesus Christ who are living outside of the United States and Canada. And that's a lot of people. Missionologists created the term 1040 window, and I'm sure you've all heard that before, to describe the geographical region between 10 and 40 degrees latitude, which many believe to be the least evangelized region in the world. The 1330 window refers to people between the ages of 13 and 30, the largest unreached people group in the world today. And that's, I don't know who came up with that. You can find that on a lot of people's websites and that sort of thing. But there's a term out there now, 1330 window. Those who are between the ages of 1330 who need Jesus Christ because they're the largest unreached people's group in the world today. Just something for us to think about. So the first reason this is important is because of the large number of young people who need Jesus Christ. Secondly, the broken world of youth. You guys know this. A lot of you are involved in youth ministry right here in California, but across the world, we are dealing with many of those 1.8 billion young people are very, very broken people because this is a broken world. And I know that you guys know that. I was driving through a Starbucks, and I usually don't go through the drive-thru, but one day I was going through a drive-thru, and I was waiting for, it was probably just a decaf coffee that I was getting, and I was waiting for it. I was waiting at the window and waiting a little impatiently. I don't get super impatient, but it was taking quite a while for this coffee to come. And I'm waiting, and I'm checking my emails, and I'm looking. I look over at the window, and there's a sign in the window that says 780 million people lack access to clean water. So here I am waiting for my coffee and reading this sign. It says 780 million people can't find clean water to drink. I wonder what it would be like to do youth ministry and what it's like to disciple young people in a place where a part of the world, a region of the world, where they can't find clean water to drink. Or if they do find water to drink, they're drinking water that's causing many diseases and causing them to be very ill. I wonder what discipleship looks like when you're dealing with those kind of young people. I was, not a long time ago, my son graduated from Taylor University and with a photography degree. And he was looking for a job, but he didn't have a car yet. And so I drove him to this job interview. And he walked into there very confidently, I'm telling him all this stuff, you know, remember to do this, remember to do that, look sharp, be engaged, all these things that dads say. And he was like, Dad, I got this. You've got to know my son, but it's like, I got it. I know what I'm doing here. And he walked in, again, very confidently that he'd probably get a job out of this. He did get a job out of that interview. And it makes me think about the estimated 73.4 million unemployed young people in the world in 2013. 73.4 million unemployed young people. What is it like to disciple young people in a region of the world where most of them will never have the opportunity even to have a job interview the way that my son did, let alone get a good job? Many of them haven't even had the opportunity to go to school, to college like this, university like this one, or even high school in some regions of the world. And again, you guys know this, but it is a broken world for the young people that we serve. 1.8 billion young people worldwide, and many of them in various parts of the world are dealing with these kinds of issues. Let me just mention one more story. My wife and I, not too long ago, it was a while back now, we went to a mega church just outside of Chicago where we live. And we were sitting in the service, and I don't know, but I think it was something like 20,000 people were going to attend services at that church during the weekend that we were there. 20,000. And we're sitting in there, and what it does is it makes me wonder what it'd be like to do youth ministry in a place where there might be a church in the community and there might not be. Or in a country where some of the largest churches are 150 people. And I wonder what it'd be like, you're all in this school, Christian school, but I wonder what it'd be like for students in some of these countries who go to school and they can't look around the room and see anybody else who's a believer. And they walk out of school and they go into their homes and they don't see anybody else who's a believer. And they walk through a mall and they probably, if there is a mall there, and they probably don't see anybody else who's a believer. I wonder what it would be like to be in a country like Poland where they do things like, there's a saying that the nail that sticks up the highest gets pounded down. I wonder what it'd be like to be a believer, to be a young person, and wanting to share your faith with somebody in a country where if you stick out a little bit, you're going to get pounded down. And there's not going to be encouragement groups. There's not going to be small groups to be a part of. And I'm not saying that's all over the world. I am saying that all over the world you can find young people who are living in a very, very broken world. So why is this conversation important? First of all, because of the large number of young people. Secondly, because of the broken world of youth. And you know that you can walk down the street, you can go into your dorm today and see broken young people. And it's a needy world. Number three, I've got throughout history, God has worked in a huge way in and through young people. And one reason why we should be concerned about discipling young people in a global sense is because God uses young people huge. And imagine what could happen in some of these countries, in some of these regions of the world where there aren't many believers, if we could reach some of the young people, because God uses them in a big way. And I've got down here that a recent Barna survey shows that 77% of evangelical Christians in the United States became believers before their 21st birthday. Many of you. By the time you're 21, you were already a believer. You can go to many churches and ask people to stand if they became a believer before they were 21. And here in the United States, that would be a majority of the people. Another survey by the International Bible Society indicates that 83% of Christians globally make a commitment to Christ by the time they were 14. That's huge. 83% of all believers do that by the time they're 14 years old. Just to give you some idea why it's important that we reach out to young people, children and young people. That's huge. And then let me ask you, as far as biblical examples of young people that God used, name a couple just real quick. What are some of the young people in the Bible that God used at a young age? David, huge. Good example. Jeremiah. Timothy? Did somebody say Timothy? Great. Mary? Excellent example. Anybody know the story of Josiah, King Josiah? Since we are part of Josiah Venture, and we'll tell you more about that after. Does anybody know the story there? Susan and Brenda?
He's shaking his head.
Go ahead.
He was a young king that stepped up to the throne and reigned over. He was a good king, and he reigned over, I think, 52 years. In Israel. Yeah, and he restored the temple. I think so. Something like he rebuilt a lot of Israel. I believe he was king at the time of Jeremiah. A couple of the other prophets. But yeah, he was one of the greatest kings in the Old Testament.
He found the Old Testament, and actually the whole nation changed as a result of what happened with him and through him. And we just believe that there needs to be more Josiahs in these countries and in our world. Young guys who are absolutely committed to the Word of God. We could go on and talk about guys throughout church history, but I won't do that right now. Just the fourth reason, the lack of trained youth workers serving globally outside of U.S. and Canada, where the majority of young people are. We already said that 96% of the world's young people, 13 to 30-year-olds, live outside of North America. That means there's 4% here, which means that if you take another stat that talks about the number of trained youth workers, the number of trained youth workers somewhere is something like 90% of the world's trained youth leaders serves in the United States, with 4% of the world's young people in North America, not just the United States. There's a need. So we're talking about all these young people, the broken worlds they live in, and the huge need for young people to come to know Christ. And 90% of the world's trained youth leaders, something like that, are serving here, serving 4% of the world's youth. That's a stat that should at least make us consider, how can we, no matter what you're going to do with your life, how can you engage in serving the world's youth? Whether that's through being a pastor here, whether that's through working in a business here somewhere or overseas, but how can you at least engage, whether that's praying, whether that's serving somehow, whether that's giving, whether that's going. How can you engage in the needs of the world's young people today? Let's. Those are questions that Josiah Venture, and that's the organization that the three of us serve with, and I'll let them introduce themselves after. But Josiah Venture is an organization that seeks to serve young people around the world, mostly at this point, specifically in Central and Eastern Europe. And let me just show you a quick video, and then we'll talk about some of the things that Josiah Venture does to try to help these students make disciples, to make disciples, to make disciples. Our vision within Josiah Venture is, and Christine there said it very clearly, our vision is to see a movement of God among the youth of Central and Eastern Europe that finds its home in the local church and transforms society. That's what we pray for. That's what we work toward. That's what we're asking God to do. And we believe that we're part of a movement, not just Central and Eastern Europe, but that's going throughout the world. This is our vision, and our mission within Josiah Venture is to equip young leaders to fulfill Christ's commission through the local church. And as we wrote the vision and the mission for Josiah Venture, we thought very clearly about each word that we used. We wanted the local church to be a huge part of that. We wanted to talk about equipping young leaders, and again, for some of the reasons that we talked about earlier. We wanted to make sure that we were talking about a movement, but not about Josiah Venture's movement or Biola's movement or a movement of some cool people. But we're talking about a movement of God. And that we are not that movement, but we are only part of it. There's many churches that are part of that. There's many people praying for us who are part of that. There's supporters who are part of that. Many schools, many interns. How many of you have, and I think there's a few of you here, but how many of you have been either an intern with Josiah Venture in the past, or you've gone over to one of the countries that we serve in? Great. Excellent. How about somebody telling all these guys what countries you know that Josiah Venture serves in? Just Ukraine?
Slovenia.
Okay, Slovenia,
Czech Republic,
Czech Republic,
Poland,
Poland,
Slovakia,
Croatia, Slovakia,
Estonia,
Estonia,
Romania,
Latvia.
Latvia, Romania,
Germany,
Eastern
Germany.
Serbia.
That's great. That's very close. There's 12 or 13 countries that we serve in right now, and the thing that's common among the countries that we serve in is that they are all former communist countries. So whether they say they're in Central Europe or Eastern Europe, the piece so far has been that they're all former communist, and I think because of that, there's certain things that we do when we're discipling young people that might be different, or at least we have to be aware of culturally, that might be different than if we were serving in Africa or China or here in the States. And it's important, no matter where you're about making disciples, that you understand some of that culture. And at this point, some people ask why we're not in other countries in other parts of the world. And at this point, we say these are countries that God's called us to, but also these are the countries that we feel like we know something about because there is some similarities. Even though they're very different, as you cross border from one country to the next, you can go from an atheistic country like Czech Republic into a very Catholic country like Poland, and it'd be very, very different in lots of ways. So that's our vision, is see a movement of God among the youth. Central and Eastern Europe finds its home in a local church, transforms society. Our mission is to equip young leaders to fulfill Christ's commission. We would call ourselves a disciple-making youth, or a disciple-making ministry. That's what we are about, is making disciples who make disciples who make disciples. Two parts of making disciples for us is that it means that we are incarnational. What does that mean to you guys when we say we are an incarnational ministry? I know you can read it there on the sheet, but just somebody tell me, what do you think it means to be an incarnational ministry?
You become one of them. You get in and assimilate to their culture, learn their language.
Excellent. It'd be very easy to just go over and be North Americans in a country for a very short time, or engage in a way that we're not really trying to understand their culture. And by being incarnational, we are talking, one piece of that is trying to understand the culture that we serve in. And I think for you guys, even if you do that in other parts of LA or other parts of the United States, that you have to be thinking, what is the culture that we're in? What else? What does it mean to be incarnational? Yeah.
Becoming a part of the community and like developing a relationship and trust.
Uh-huh.
That you actually try to share in.
Great. building trust, becoming a part of their community. Excellent. We've just put down a few things here. We become students of local youth ministry before we teach it. We want to understand the youth ministry that's happening in these countries already. Secondly, we apply ourselves to mastering the language and culture, or at least seeking to. We don't always master those things, but we try to. We identify with local body of believers and work through the national church. That's pretty important that we work with the local churches wherever we go. We develop ministry models that maximize the local culture, and we rely on the power of God in our lives and the channels of friendship. Besides being incarnational, we want to be multiplicational. We get very excited when one person becomes a believer because we know that the angels rejoice when that happens. One person. I've heard stories of people especially back in the day, we used to hear stories often of people in some tribes in different parts of the world where missionaries would serve for 30, 40, 50 years and see one convert come out of it. And we know that if God called them to do that, that's an awesome, amazing, wonderful thing. But wouldn't it be even more wonderful to set up ministries where we're seeing thousands, not thousands, but millions of young people coming to know Christ, changing their culture, changing their world around them, transforming their society. And that's how we pray. That's what we try to look for as we go. We want to be multiplicational, not just incarnational. And big part of that is for all of us to do our piece, wherever that is. And God's going to use that huge. I gave you that definition earlier of what disciple making is. And it included winning the lost, growing the believer, and equipping the worker. And what I want to do just in the next couple minutes is show you a couple videos and have a few people. This thing changed here. Great. I just want to show how those three pieces are things that Josiah Venture is trying to do. And we're trying to win the lost, grow the believer, and equipping the worker as we are a disciple-making ministry. And we know that there's a lot of other organizations doing this. We know a lot of churches are doing this, a lot of individuals doing this. It's not just Josiah Venture. But these are some things that we do. And the reason why I'm going to talk about some of these with you is so that you can see that God uses a lot of different people, a lot of different gifts, a lot of different ministries. And we try to use those things. And so the first one I wanted to show you, if we can. Perfect. Okay. Something we call fusion. And I'll tell you a little bit about fusion after you watch this. Why don't we all just stop for a minute? What are you so excited about here?
Oh, I just love, I wasn't a part of Fusion, but I just love that ministry, just because, you're probably going to talk about this, I don't want to steal your thunder, but I
please
got to have
do.
some conversations with some kids when I was interning in Slovenia, and they would go to Fusion, and just the fact that they went originally, like it said, they wanted to become rock stars. Like, they wanted to learn how to play guitar, or they wanted to express themselves, through art, and a lot of, people think they're weird or whatever, kind of like normal teenagers. But then, like it says, they find so much more, these relationships that they build with Christians, and that they find that, oh my gosh, there's a God who loves art, and there's a God who, creates, and, it's just something so new to them, and it's so beautiful, and I think it's just a beautiful example of how we do use our gifts, and we can show them that, God isn't just this high, pompous deity, but that he is he's a humongous God that they can't even comprehend, but that he loves creativity, and through that they can personally relate with him. And so I think it's just something that's really unique about Josiah Venture's ministry over there, and I love it. I love seeing them enjoy themselves, and get all crazy and rock star and have colored hair. It just makes me really happy.
Amen. And I didn't even pay her to say that, you guys. We know that young people across the world, there's many, some don't give a rip, but there's many who would love to become rock stars. And we believe that God can use our gifts, our music, our passion for drama, our passion for dance, some of those things, and use it in a big way when it comes to winning young people for Christ, winning the lost. So this is one way that we seek to do that. I'm going to ask Susan, who's been a big part of a ministry in Poland called Exit, which also uses these kinds of gifts here.
Okay, I have a video too, but great. Gord didn't know about it, so you don't get to see them dancing around and having fun. But I like to walk around and have fun. So, well, I've been doing youth work since I was 20, and still doing it. Love it, like you. Yeah, man. But I got really sick of girls getting pregnant and kids turning to drinking and becoming lushes and stuff like that. And our team over in Czech, they started this thing called Exit Tour, where they go into schools and get to, for a whole day, take over the whole school doing prevention classes. And I heard about this and I got all excited, like, we gotta do this in Poland. And so we started trying to do it and have done it in Poland. It's called Exit Tour. The schools let us come in, can you imagine? To teach God's values and teach about, not about alcohol, drugs, pure sexual purity, human trafficking, emotional healing, recovery from divorce or a dad who's left your family. And I get to often teach about the sexual purity stuff. I don't know how I became the sex expert because, I'm not even married. But it's so awesome to be able to talk to 300 kids a day, 1,000 in 3 days, 333 a day, about these kinds of prevention things. And one girl wrote me, because I put my name on the board, write me on Facebook, if you want to talk, I'm open to talk. And I got a message, thank you, thank you, thank you. I was going to sleep with my friend, who's not even a boyfriend, just because I felt like I was the only one who hadn't yet. And I now see why that would have been such a big mistake. And then we started communicating, and we bring a band in also from the States or UK or wherever. They do concerts in the schools, and then at the end they do a big concert for all 3 schools, 1,000 kids, share the gospel, pass out Bibles to anybody who wants them. And a lot of people have gotten saved through it. The really cool thing about Fusion is that it's every week contact with kids, slowly but surely leading them to God. And the cool thing about Exit Tour is, bam, in 1 week, we get to minister to 1,000 young people. Mm-hmm. And there's only around 5,000 Christian young people in all of Poland where I am. Like, that's how many are at this school, right? That's how many Christian kids in the whole country of 38 million people in Poland. And so we want to do as many as we can. Now, Exit Tour is going to Slovakia and some of the other JV countries, and I hope it goes to all of them because it reaches thousands, and it's really cool.
I'm going to ask Susan to stay up here for a minute because I want her to say one other thing. But just before she does, we also under Winning the Lost. And again, I hope you're just seeing that there's lots of different ways that God uses us and can use you. We also, for those who aren't into the music rock star scene, there's a lot of people, a lot of young people who love sports. And we recently started a ministry called Edge in some of these countries, where we're putting together teams and leagues in these countries where they can play. One of it is a floor hockey league. There's also football or soccer. And we are seeing many guys have the opportunity not only just to have a good time and do their sports thing, but hear about Jesus Christ during that time and form relationships that change their lives. And I was going to show you a video about that, but I won't because we're going to run out of time. But those are some of the things that we do under Winning the Lost. We also do English camps. And again, in many countries across the world, if you've got a tool that you can use, and teaching English doesn't just mean, it doesn't mean that you have to be a real teacher to do this. What you have to do is go and love young people and talk to them a lot and help them to practice their English. And if you can do that, we do that in our camps. And again, they not only come out learning English, but they come out with a relationship with someone who loves Christ. And that can change the world. And so as you think of missions, don't think, church planting. Church planting is awesome, and there needs to be church planters. Don't think preaching. Preaching is awesome, and there needs to be preachers. But God can use you. And that's what we're finding within Josiah Venture. So that's under Winning the Lost. But then there's the Growing the Believer part. And we are involved in something called Advance, which is church planting. And not just planting churches, but helping churches plant churches and helping churches become healthy, because we're committed to the local church. And so we don't go in there just thinking we know how to plant a church, as much as we do know how to walk alongside the guys who God has called to plant the churches in their countries. And that's a great ministry that we can have when it comes to growing the believer. Also, assisting in youth groups. Many of our staff are involved in youth ministry, actual youth groups in churches and that sort of thing. But probably the key thing that we do is one-on-one relationships. Spending a lot of time one-on-one. We say we are a relational ministry. And I'd just like Susan to talk, just maybe tell us a story or two of a few of the young people that you've worked with over the years.
Okay, so when I was 20, back when it all started, the youth pastor came to me and he said, these 3 girls got saved. Can you disciple one of them? What? What's discipleship? I grew up going to church since I was 2 weeks old, and I didn't know what discipleship was. What is up with, that's sick. And so he said, just teach them the Bible, just read the Bible together, go to McDonald's, talk about boys. Okay, I can do that. So I started meeting with this girl and fell in love with spiritual parenting and never stopped since. And so now I have a whole lot of daughters, spiritual daughters, all around this world. And I realized it's not just doing those little, discipleship books, in all different colors where you fill in the blanks. That's what I did, my first disciples, because that's all I knew how to do, because all he told me to do was go to McDonald's. And I've realized what you guys said earlier, which is that it's life on life, and being with them from the cradle to the grave, helping them learn how to love God and love others by living it, by being with them, by taking them with you everywhere you go. And that's what I do. But just little old me doing it in Poland is not going to do much. I've been there 18 years, and so, I've discipled some. But like Gord said, we want multiplication, thousands, not, dozens. And so after I've been with them for a while, teaching them how to follow Christ, then I want them to know how to do it with others. Because if I finish meeting with them and they don't know how to give money to God, to the church, well then, I didn't teach them enough, Or if they don't know how to witness, then they're not fully a follower of Christ. And if they're not doing this, discipling someone else, then that's like me having a baby, raising them up, and then they never have any kids. If everybody did that, the whole world would disappear, right? So then I start helping them know how to have other disciples of their own. And one of them, my roommate, Veronica, she led her now atheistic roommate to Christ and is discipling her. And then her friend at school discipled her, led her to Christ, discipled her, and on and on. And now they're helping run their little small church plant. And she's gone off to Thailand for 9 months. So it's a matter of walking with them
Great.
and helping them lead others on this walk.
Thanks, Susan. We talk about the relational aspect, and again, that's something God can use any of us relationally. You don't have to be some high, super outgoing person. You have to be somebody who loves Christ and loves people. And as you do that, they will see Christ in your life. And as you walk with them, as you talk with them, as you spend time with them, it's going to make a huge difference. And that's what we're finding all the time. So wherever you are, and I'm going to keep saying this, but we're almost finished. Wherever you are, wherever you go, however God calls you, whatever that means, be involved, be engaged relationally with people. And as you do that, God will use you huge.
We hope you enjoyed this message. Biola University offers a variety of biblically centered degree programs, ranging from business to ministry to the arts and sciences. Learn more at biola.edu.